We'll move on to another theme, really, a theme which is obviously closely linked to this one, the idea of money, banking, credit, etc. And I know that Mr. Cobbett wrote at great length on these matters.
On the subject of bankers and jobbers, sir, well, as our young friend and I agree, the poor are always with us, but it has been said, so are the rich. And sadly, some among those who are not rich maintain the desire to be rich, or at least the desire not to appear poor. And hence that destructive thing honoured with the name of speculation, but which ought to be called gambling. A time was when money jingled in your purse or your pocket. That's the kind of money I paid those working for me, and I paid fair. I promised to pay the bearer £1. A fine promise indeed, when there is not gold enough in the bank to pay, to keep it. Credit has its place. But nowadays, I mean the rich establishment of my time, feed themselves upon boundless credit on the backs of the poor working man. Real money, real cash, or this paper stuff. The power which money gives is the power of brute force. It is the power of the bayonet and the bludgeon. Now, something I wrote, Tom Paine put me onto it when I was in Newgate. Yeah. A letter from Newgate. I wrote, I hold that a false or paper money, not convertible into gold or silver on demand on the issue of the paper, is one of the greatest scourges ever inflicted upon a nation. I hold that it is the weight of taxes which produces all these miseries which this nation now suffers, and that these taxes go in part to keep sinecure placemen, pensioners and grantees, of whose public service I can find no trace. The trouble is, this damned funding system, I beg your pardon, ladies, I refer to the business of printing money to pay the interest on the national debt, while out there be stock jobbers and bankers ready to make a mint as the taxes grow and more money gets printed to make a funding system built on credit. I mean, in this new age of yours, I cannot believe that there are greedy bankers or unscrupulous jobbers, or that money gets printed to ease things for the banks when they get into trouble. No, sir, surely that cannot be.
Any comment on that, Mr. Jones?
No, it's all fine. No, things have definitely improved. Yeah, blimey. I was at Tory Party conference for 4 days, lucky old me. And it was interesting that Theresa May did a speech, and she said that since the financial crisis, it's been ordinary working class people, not the financial sector, that has been expected to pay the greatest cost, which I thought was slightly odd, because it was almost like she was a disinterested observer who's just been, like a columnist almost, who's just stroking her chin and going, what has happened in the last few years? I mean, not one of the pillars of the government who supported and implemented policies like the cutting of in-work benefits, like the failure to build housing, like the creation predominantly of less paid insecure work. But there you have it. But she was obviously absolutely right in her detached observer status, that a crisis was caused by the financial sector and those who failed to regulate them, but the price was paid, of course, by millions of people who had nothing to do with the crash whatsoever. And I think what's interesting is what we saw, of course, it was under both the Conservatives and New Labour, because one of the claims of, or the narrative spun by the Conservatives, they backed every single penny that Labour spent on schools and hospitals till the end of 2008. Every single penny they backed. But what they said in the aftermath was one of the main reasons we're in this crash because Labour spent too much money, when the real failure, of course, is to regulate a financial sector. Now, what we've seen, particularly from the 70s onwards, again under successive governments of all political stripes, is the hollowing out of the manufacturing sector with a economy which has been increasingly geared around the needs of the financial sector based in London and the South East. And that has obviously caused a huge imbalance in the economy, which is why the crash which happened in this country was so acute. Now, if we look at what's happened, and I think this is just the point I made before about benefit sanctioning, the banks were not bailed out by free market dogma, they were bailed out by the states. They effectively became the most lavishly supported benefit claimant in Britain, but with two key differences. The amount of money they got, hundreds of billions of pounds, not a pathetic, derisory amount, but critically, so few strings attached to the support they got. So our banks pay more top bonuses to those at the top of the banks than every European Union country put together, where they didn't lend properly to small businesses in the aftermath of the crash, helping to choke off a recovery from a crash they had caused. Well, obviously, nobody went to prison for what happened. Whilst at the other end, you get benefit claimants, their support, their pathetic, derisory support, becomes ever more conditional or is simply taken away altogether. And it is a case, if you like, that if you're at the top of society, the financial sector, the state will come rushing to your rescue, give you all the money you need with so few strings attached, while those at the bottom of society, their support has become ever more conditional, taken away. And if you like, it's socialism for the rich, and it's capitalism, sink or swim, for everybody else. That we do have statism in this country, but it is statism for powerful vested interests, while the state is rolled back, but for those who need support the most. And that defines this society in which we live. One rule for those at the top, one rule for everybody else. And what's happened since the financial crash, as Theresa May so eloquently put it, as a disinterested, impartial observer, is that those who had nothing to do with it have paid the price. Now, we will have a rebalancing of our economy by the looks of things, because we'll be leaving the single market and the financial sector won't be getting passport access. Now, that's not quite what people were asking for on my wing of politics, if you like. We wanted a rebalancing to build up the industries of the future like Germany have done, where they've seen the climate change crisis as an opportunity. So they've had an industrial strategy to build up renewable energy industries with secure jobs, backed up with apprenticeships for younger people. But we're not going to have that. We will have London's economy, as things stand, taking a battering, the financial services contracting, without, obviously, unless there's a dramatic change in strategy, to build up those industries. So that will be not, when people say we want to rebalance the economy from the financial sector, we don't say just trash it and then don't build up the industries of the future to replace it. So we need now, finally to wrap up, to build a different sort of society where the financial sector isn't a casino which operates, if you like, to serve the whims of top bankers who are paid extortionate bonuses, where the risks are, if you like, we nationalise the risks and we privatise the profits. We have a financial sector that is different. It runs in the interests of people in this country, whilst we have a new industrial strategy to build up the industries of the future. But until we have a society that is not run with one rule for some people and one rule for everybody else, then we won't be able to build that sort of society.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And let's move on to some questions. I think we should give the next room priority. Does it have any mics working so that we can hear what's being said? Barley room, questions?
I could just pop over, ask. They're there. I mean, yeah. This is one rule for people here. It's one rule for. Honestly, it's injustice. Look at it.
Owen, while we're waiting, you wouldn't have just let the banks collapse.
No, that's not the argument I'm making at all. What we should have done is take proper democratic public control of the banks, and actually, instead of basically what we did is we nationalised the profit. And, sorry, we didn't do that. We nationalised the risks and we privatised the profits. So the banks were able to continue much as they always did. We should have actually had accountable public control. You don't just give them a load of money, allow them to carry on paying as much bonuses as they were paying before, and not lend to small businesses. So I would have had a properly accountable financial system, which would have been transforming the nature of it. We didn't do that. We just said, as things were before, with that public support.
So there would have been nationalised banks paying not the going rate for their executives and things of that kind. Is that what you...
Yeah, we've moved more in line with other European countries, like Germany, for example.
So there's a question there, or an observation, comment, yeah?
You talked about Theresa May. Can you take any comfort from her current rhetoric. I mean, she is rather dispassionate in the way she speaks about anything, particularly in light of the fact that in the past she has faced down a few of our shibboleths, like the boys in blue, and shown quite a lot of courage in that regard. Do you think the rhetoric now about inequality is empty, or do you have some hope?
Well, I think I would say that yes, it's a vindication for people making these arguments for a very long time. People who were ridiculed and attacked and demonised as though they were beyond the pale, because she made an argument about tax justice, including that it's not just the individual by themselves, it's a collective endeavour, that people have paid as I keep saying, paid the price for those at the top of society, that we live in a very unequal society. These are arguments, as I've said, that have been ridiculed and mocked. And I think, yes, what we should say is we've won the argument. But in her actual record, because we've not heard, there's no evidence on economic issues that she's actually spoken out about these things. And I have to say, and this will maybe divide the room, that one of her first flagship policies is to reintroduce secondary moderns into this country. We used to have secondary moderns on a national scale, where most people were written off at a young age, including my own uncle, disproportionately working class people, while overwhelmingly middle class people sent to grammar schools. And in Kent, we have selection still in place, and there the outcomes for poorer children are much worse than they are in London, where you don't have selection. The evidence, 17% of Kent are on free school meals, 3% of people in grammar schools in Kent are on free school meals. So just by her one flagship policy, which even David Cameron regarded as unacceptable for that reason, then if I'm judging her by that alone, then I think her rhetoric is empty. But of course, I'm more than willing to hear what she's going to do to create the skilled, secure jobs of the future, what she's going to do to deal with the housing crisis, and that she has to be scrutinised on the basis of that substance. But it was George Osborne, let's not forget, who said powerfully, emotionally, we're all in this together. That was not borne out, of course, by the evidence, and she has a long way to go until she convinces us that the rhetoric that she's just come up with is any less empty than the rhetoric of George Osborne.